Hi everyone. In today's class we are going to discuss about laws of conservation of mass, energy and linear momentum with examples. So these laws are very useful to explain uh, the conservation property of so, these parameters called mass, energy and linear momentum in mechanics or kinematics. I am S. Vidyarani, working as Assistant Professor of Physics at MVS Government Degree College, Autonomous, Mehboob Nagar. Let us see what are these laws about. So in today's class, conservation laws, we will be learning about the total amount of mass or the total amount of energy or the total amount of linear momentum as well as the total amount of angular momentum. So in an isolated system is constant. So we will be learning about these today, that what will be the total amount of mass, what will be the total amount of energy, or what will be the total amount of linear momentum and total amount of angular momentum in an isolated system. So according to conservation property or law of conservation, so all these parameters will be constant in an isolated system. This we will prove by taking some examples, and we will see how this total amount of mass or energy or linear momentum is constant. First, the most fundamental ideas in physics are conservation laws. I have just now told that these are very important laws regarding conservation of energy, mass, as well as angular momentum and linear momentum. So these are statements that some quantity in a system doesn't change. What is meant by conservation? Conservation means um, these quantities, whereas mass or energy, let us say, so these quantities will not change even after the system undergoes some changes. So to apply these laws, first we must define what is a system. So a system can be said as a collection of objects without external inputs. So the objects may or may not be interacting, but the key point is there should not be any external influences. So first we will define a system, which means a collection of similar objects without any external inputs. Conservation laws, if you see example of a system, let us say the filling station pump and your gas tank is a system. So the filling station pump and gas tank is a system. Here a person is filling the gas tank with the fuel. So this becomes a system. All the gas leaving the pump goes into a tank. So whatever the gas coming out of this pipe hose will get into the tank of our car. That means whatever mass, whatever the fuel mass that is coming out, ejecting out from the pipe, is inputted into the gas tank. That means here the mass is conserved. So we can say that the mass is conserved because whatever the mass of fuel lost by this pipe is equal to the mass gained by the gas tank. So hence we can say that even though there is a transfer of mass, but whatever mass is ejecting is getting into the tank. That means there is no change in the mass even after the transfer takes place. So we can say that mass is conserved because the gas lost by the pump is gained by our tank. Hence, this can be said as conservation of mass. So this is an example for conservation of mass. So a system, as I have already told, is a collection of objects without any external inputs. So one more example. So the tanker and fighter are not a system. Here if you observe here, there is a tanker over here. So this is a jet fighter. So here tanker is filling the fuel into the jet fighter. So in air only. So the tanker and fighter are not a system, because what happens, fuel is burned by both planes during transfer, as both are moving on their flight. So during their flight only, this fuel is getting transferred from tanker to the aircraft. That means mass is continuously changing because both are using fuel. So the fuel burned is combined with oxygen in the atmosphere, that is, it's an external input. As I've already told, there should not be any external input such that, so it should follow law of conservation. But here if you see the example, so this tanker as well as this fighter is burning the fuel within them. Hence there is no equal mass is there. So total mass of fuel plus exhaust gases is greater than total mass of fuel before transfer. So as the gases are getting exhausted, because of which the total mass before transfer is not equal to total mass after transfer into the flight. So hence we can say that this is not a system. The tanker and the fighter are not a system. Let us see the conservation of energy now. So according to conservation of energy, the formula is, mathematical representation is mgh plus half mv square is equal to constant. In earlier classes I have discussed what is mgh. So remind this, this is called as potential energy, whereas half mv square, if you remind, so this is nothing but kinetic energy. That means whatever the total energy or the sum of all the energies such as potential energy and kinetic energy remains constant. This mathematical representation gives the meaning that, so the total energy remains constant. So this is potential energy, this is kinetic energy. The sum of energy is nothing but total energy. That means total energy remains constant, means it's called as conservation of energy. Let us see in detail. So I have just now told mgh means gravitational potential energy, half mv square means kinetic energy. So if gravity is the only force that does work, so the total amount of energy, potential energy plus kinetic energy, is constant. So that means energy is conserved. We will see the statement for law of conservation of energy. Statement for law of conservation of energy goes like this. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That means total energy of the universe is constant, but it can be transformed from one form to another form. So that means whatever energy present in the universe, that is neither created nor can be destroyed. But whatever energy that we get in the universe, it remains constant, but we can change or we can transform that energy from one form to another form. See, suppose mass can be converted into energy or energy can be converted into mass. So in this way we can change the form of energies, but we cannot create or destroy the energy. So if the forces acting on the particle are conservative, its mechanical energy remains constant. So when forces are acting on the particles which are conservative in nature, that means their mechanical energy is constant. So we will see with an example. So let us say a body is at point A. So after throwing the ball up into the air, it has reached its intermediate level, that is, let us say at a height h, there is a point B, and finally it reached the top point C. So where capital H is the height of the ball which has gone from ground. Okay, so what happens, as we all know, so at point C let us calculate the potential energy. So we know that whatever potential energy is there, it will be high at the topmost point. So here height is maximum, capital H. So hence maximum potential energy, that is mgh. So here we got mgh. But because when potential energy is maximum, that means kinetic energy is minimum. So at this point, no point of kinetic energy will be there. So we have all the energy will be in the form of potential energy at point C, that is mgh. So at point B, if you see, let us suppose at a point B it has reached at a height of small h. Now what happens, because the potential energy will be mgh. H is the height of the ball at point B. So and here if you see, there is one more term gets added, that is called as kinetic energy, because we know that kinetic energy means the energy possessed by a body when it is moving. That means in this transit point from A to C, the ball has reached B, but it is not stopping, it is continuously moving. Hence at that point B, it will have the kinetic energy of half mv square. Hence the total amount of energy sums up to mgh as well as half mv square. Hence mgh plus half mv square. If you see at the ground point called A, at ground point A, because there is no height existing, and we know that potential energy is directly proportional to height. So when there is no height, means h is equal to 0. At h is equal to 0, there won't be any potential energy at point A. So hence all the energy will be in the form of maximum kinetic energy. When potential energy is minimum, remember that kinetic energy will be maximum. Hence now at point A, whatever the energy is there, it is in the form of kinetic energy. Hence, so the ball possesses energy of half mv square. So this is how we will calculate. This is the upward movement that we have calculated. Even in downward movement also, if you observe the same thing, mgh will be the potential energy at point C, but no kinetic energy. Whereas here if you see, if you take u as the velocity of the body which is coming downwards, then at point B it will be in the form of potential energy as well as kinetic energy. But whereas at point A, again potential energy becomes minimum, that means kinetic energy becomes maximum. So this can be explained by the upward movement of any object or downward movement of any object. Now we will see the proof of conservation of energy. Suppose conservative forces operate on the system of particles. Let's say if UF and UI be the potential energies of the system. UI means potential energy, initial potential energy. UF means final potential energy. And W be the work done. Then, so the total work done can be taken as potential energy, final potential energy minus initial potential energy is equal to minus W. But according to work energy theorem, already we have proved in the previous classes that work done is equal to change in kinetic energy. So let us say final kinetic energy is Kf and initial kinetic energy is Ki. This W is equal to Kf minus Ki. So consider this as equation 2. From 1 and 2, if we compare both 1 and 2, or else if we substitute the value of W from equation 2 in equation 1, then we get this equation. UF minus UI is equal to minus of substituting the value of W, that is Kf minus Ki. Now interchanging the places of all these terms, so we get UF plus Kf is equal to UI plus Ki. Consider this as equation 3. What is UF? UF is our final potential energy. What is Kf? Kf is our final kinetic energy. So the sum of final potential energy and kinetic energy is equal to, so here UI means initial potential energy and Ki means initial kinetic energy. So the sum of initial potential energy and kinetic energy, so both are equal. That means the energy at initial point and the energy at final point are same. This can be said as total energy is remaining constant. Now we will see with an example. So let us say there is a free fall, okay, from which is at a height of 80 meters. An object is thrown from at a height of 80 meters. Let us say at time 0 seconds the velocity will be 0. That means it is in the static position. Now let us see after time 1 second what happens. It has reached at a height of 75 meters. So now the velocity of this ball is 10 meters per second, let us say. Now after time is equal to 2 seconds, it has reached a velocity of 20 meters per second and height is decreasing to 60 meters. Next, at t is equal to 3 seconds, velocity let us say is 30 meters per second and now the height has been decreased to 35 meters. Finally, after t is equal to 4 seconds, the velocity has reached to maximum of 40 meters per second and the height is 0. That means now the ball has been fallen onto the ground. So if you see the example of this, you will better understand how the potential energy and kinetic energy changes. See here, height is maximum if you observe all these values. So here the height is maximum. When the height is maximum, what energy will be more? Remember once, try to recollect once. So when height is maximum, that means potential energy will be maximum, because potential energy is the product of mass, acceleration due to gravity g and height h. So here height is maximum, hence what happens, potential energy will also be maximum at this point. Understood? So if you observe here one more point, when potential energy is maximum, that means vice versa, kinetic energy will be minimum at this height. Okay, so while you go down, that means the ball is falling down. If you might have observed, so velocity at topmost point is 0, which is at rest position. Later on slowly gaining the velocity, and it has reached a maximum of 40 meters per second before hitting the ground. So if you observe here, the velocity is slowly increasing. So what is the relation between kinetic energy and velocity? We know that kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. That means if there is an increase in velocity, then kinetic energy will also increase. So hence, if you observe here there won't be any kinetic energy because V is 0. Obviously kinetic energy will be 0. Slowly it is increasing, velocity is increasing, hence kinetic energy will also increase slowly. Slowly it also increases here more and it also increases here. Then if you observe at this point, it has reached a maximum velocity of 40 meters per second. Hence at this point kinetic energy will be maximum. So whatever the energy is there, it will be in the form of kinetic energy before hitting the ground. Because velocity is maximum, kinetic energy will also be maximum. And remind my words that when kinetic energy is maximum, at that point potential energy is minimum. In other words, from here also, from the figure also you can say, as the height is decreasing, so that means potential energy is decreasing continuously, because potential energy is equal to mgh. So when height is reached to 0 meters, that means it is hitting the ground. So at this point there is no height, hence potential energy will also be 0. So you have to remember these points, that potential energy will be maximum at a maximum height, kinetic energy will be maximum when velocity is maximum. Now let us calculate this total amount of energy using the same example. Let us say the ball is having a mass, or the body object is having a mass of 1 kg, which is falling freely from 80 meters. let us calculate at this point. When t is equal to 0 seconds, v naught is equal to 0, as we have already told. H naught is equal to 80 meters. Height is 80 meters, velocity is 0. So to calculate mgh, we will see m is 1, g is, let us say, approximately 10 meters per second square, and h is 80 meters. So when we calculate the product, so we get 800 joules. Whereas this is potential energy we are calculating. Now we will calculate kinetic energy. So as V naught is equal to 0, so this kinetic energy becomes 0. Now let us sum up all the energies, potential energy as well as kinetic energy. So we got 800 joules plus 0 is equal to 800 joules. So the total energy at this point is equal to 800 joules. Next step we will see. After t is equal to 1 seconds, we have taken the instance that velocity has increased to 10 meters per second and it has reached at a height of 75 meters. Now using the same parameters and these values, we will calculate the potential energy. So if you see here, mass is 1 kg, same case, and g is 10, as well as now the height has reached to 75. So 75 into 10 into 1, that we will get as 750 joules. So this here we have got. And we have to calculate kinetic energy also. So using the value velocity 10 meters per second, if we calculate half mv square, then we will get it as 50 joules. So again, if we sum up the potential energy and kinetic energy, then this will be is equal to, again sum up to 800 joules. Next case, if you see, at t is equal to 2 seconds, again the velocity is increased to 20 meters per second and the height is decreased to 60 meters. So when we calculate the potential energy using these parameters, we get the potential energy as 600 joules, and when we calculate kinetic energy using this formula, we have got 200 joules, and when we add both the energies, we got 800 joules, same in the case as previous. Now let us see one more instance. When t is equal to 3 seconds, now the velocity has reached to 30 meters per second and the height has reached to 35 meters. So using these values, if we calculate the potential energies and kinetic energies, the values will be 350 joules and 450 joules respectively. So when we add both the energies, we got 800 joules. In the last case also we will calculate. When t is equal to 4 seconds, so maximum velocity we have reached, that is 40 meters per second, and minimum height, that is equal to 0 because the ball has hit the ground. So when we calculate mgh with this value, so we got potential energy as 0, kinetic energy as 800 joules. So when we sum up these two energies, again we got the same sum, that is 800 joules. If you observe here, in all the instances which we have seen, mgh is changing or kinetic energy is changing according to the height or velocities. But when we sum up all the energies, that is the total energy in all the cases is same. So this is nothing but conservation of energy. Even though the potential energies and kinetic energies will be changing all through the process, but when we sum up the total all the energies, so the total energy remains constant. So one more thing I want to show you here. If you observe here, at the top point mgh has a maximum value. If you observe all these values, this is the potential energy. So when we observe here the potential energy is maximum at the top point and potential energy is minimum at the bottom point. That means, so it is purely depending on the height. So if height is maximum, then we get potential energy as maximum value. When height is 0 or suppose less, then the potential energy will also be less. And if you observe the kinetic energy's value, so at the topmost point there will not be any velocity, hence kinetic energy depends on velocity, Hence, when velocity is 0, kinetic energy is also minimum or say 0. But if you observe all these values, kinetic energy is maximum at the bottom point because the velocity is maximum at the bottom point before reaching the ground. Hence, if you observe, the kinetic energy is maximum at the bottom point. And you might have observed one more thing, that when potential energy is maximum, kinetic energy is minimum. Or in other words, when potential energy is minimum, kinetic energy will be maximum. And one more thing, if you observe here, while the ball is falling, in all the intermediate cases, if you observe, so the energy is in the form of potential energy and kinetic energy, because there exists a height, maybe less height, but there exists a height, and there also exists velocity, hence we get kinetic energy also. So in all the intermediate cases, if you observe, the energy will be in the form of potential energy as well as kinetic energy. But even though whatever be the values of potential energy and kinetic energy, depending on the height and velocity of the body, but when we sum up the energies, the energy remains constant. I will show you one uh, video of regarding conservation of energy. If you observe here, I have taken an example of skating. So a skater who is skating in the uphill and downhill. Here they have shown with a graph. On y-axis it is 0%, 50% and 100%. On x-axis I have taken different types of energy. And here if you observe, EP is the potential energy, EK is the kinetic energy, and epsilon is the sum of potential energy and kinetic energy. So let us see in all the cases how this will happen. See, observe here. In this case, if you observe, so the potential energy, if you observe, the potential has been decreased from highest point to this point because the height is decreased, the height of the hill is decreased. Whereas as he is gaining acceleration while coming down because of the velocity is increasing, so what happens? Kinetic energy is increased. First there is no red line here, red bar here, but slowly as is coming down, so the kinetic energy is started increasing. But if you observe the total energy, so that is 100%. That means whether the potential energy or kinetic energy is changing according to the velocity and uh, height of the hill, but the total energy is not changing from 100%. Next case we will see. If you see here again, so if you observe here, as he has come further down, what happens? His potential energy has fallen, and now if you observe here, as he is coming down, kinetic energy has increased, but the but the total energy is not changing, that is, it is remaining constant. Next case you will see. So if you observe again, so if you observe here again, he is coming down, so his potential energy is still there, and kinetic energy is slowly increasing. Again the total energy remains constant. So if you see the, I'll show you. If you observe this, he has come down to the hill, wherein as there is no height h value, so our potential energy becomes 0, but as he has gained maximum kinetic energy because of the velocity, so his kinetic energy is maximum. But when we add up all the energies, we get the same amount of total energy. See here. Now he has started going up. So slowly potential energy is increasing and kinetic energy started decreasing little bit. But the total energy is still constant. Now if you see at this point, potential energy started increasing and kinetic energy started decreasing because both are vice versa in nature. So but still the total amount of energy is constant. Now if you observe again, potential energy has increased because he has reached to a height. When compared to this, he has reached to almost 50% of height. So hence he has gained 50% of potential energy and kinetic energy started decreasing. So now if you see, so at this point again he has reached wherein potential energy is maximum because of the maximum height and there won't be any kinetic energy because he is still in rest position, or else because there is no velocity but still the energy is maximum. This is how we calculate, we can show to the students how the potential energy and kinetic energy. Now we will see what is linear momentum. Linear momentum is defined as the product of an object's mass and its velocity. We know that mass is m and velocity is v. So linear momentum is nothing but the product of mass and velocity. That is, p is equal, linear momentum is denoted by letter p. So p is equal to m into v. Or else for linear momentum, we usually say momentum. So momentum is a measure of an object's state of motion. So momentum describes, or momentum gives the value of an object which is in motion. Consider an object whose momentum is 1 kg meter per second. That means, so this is the momentum, let us say 1 kg meter per second. What this means? That means it could be a 0.005 kg bullet traveling at 200 meters per second, or else it could be a 0.06 kg tennis ball traveling at 6.7 meters per second. In this way, we can denote linear momentum, that is p is equal to mass into velocity. If you observe the units of mass is kg, whereas velocities units is meters per second, SI units. So we have to take the product of both these. So kg into meter per second will be the units for momentum. We will see few examples regarding linear momentum. See here I have taken an example of car and a biker. So car and bicycle have same speed if you observe, but different momentum. Let us say the person on the bicycle is moving with a speed of 60 meters per second. In the same way, the car is also moving with a speed of 60 meters per second. But even though they are moving with same speed, but their momentum is different, because if you observe, the mass of the bicycle is less than when compared to the mass of the car. So we know that momentum depends on mass and velocity. Velocity is same but mass is differing. And the relation between linear momentum and mass, if you observe, linear momentum is directly proportional to mass or velocity. So even though velocity is same, if mass is more, then linear momentum will be more. If mass is less, linear momentum will be less. If you observe in these two examples, the mass of this car is more, hence the linear momentum of this car will be more even though their speeds are same. So we can also explain Newton's second law with linear momentum, or linear momentum can be explained by using Newton's second law. There is a close relation between Newton's second law as well as momentum. How? Let us see. We know that according to Newton's second law, force is equal to mass times of acceleration. Hence this can be written as Rate of change of velocity, acceleration can be written as rate of change of velocity. Hence m delta v by delta t, that is equal to, if we take the delta out, so delta into mv by delta t. We know that from the definition of linear momentum, mv is nothing but p, linear momentum. So we can, in place of mv, we can substitute p here. So we get delta p by delta t. That means force is equal to rate of change of momentum, or else force can be equal to change in momentum by change in time. So change in momentum is represented by delta p, change in time is represented by delta t. So force is nothing but change in momentum by change in time. So this can be also said as alternate form of Newton's second law. So the net external force acting on an object equals to the rate of change of linear momentum. From this mathematical expression, we can give the definition that the net external force acting on an object is equal to the rate of change of linear momentum. Let us see with an example. So here we have taken a tennis racket. So now which exerts a large force on the tennis ball for a very short time. So now we have to estimate the average force on a tennis ball as it's served. So the ball's mass is 0.06 kg and it leaves the rocket with a speed of 40 meters per second. High speed photography indicates that the contact time is about 5 milliseconds. Now let us calculate the average force. The problem given us, mass is 0.06 kg, initial velocity is 0 meters per second, final velocity we got it as 40 meters per second, and the time is given as t is equal to 0.005 seconds. To calculate the force, we know that delta of mv by delta t, that means change in mass and change in velocity. So that is equal to, our mass is having 0.06 kg and velocity, change in velocity Vf minus Vi, that is 40 meters per second, and change in time is, initially it is 0 and now it after 0.005 seconds. So change in time is, duration is 0.005 seconds. Hence if we substitute all these values and simplify, so we got 480 newtons. If you observe here, the units for force can be expressed in newtons. So 480 newtons or 108 pounds. 108 lbs or 108 pounds. This tells why we must exert a force to get an object to move or to stop its motion. So with this we can say that only when a force is exerted on any object, then only we can move the object or stop the object. So to start moving an object, we have to impart some momentum to it, or to stop a moving object, we have to bring its momentum to zero. In either cases, we have to use force in order to impart momentum or to bring its momentum to zero. It also tells that we can change the momentum using various forces and time intervals. So if you observe this equation, so F is equal to delta P by delta T, that means change in linear momentum by change in time, and F is force. So if you want to bring the change in momentum, then by taking different values of forces and different values of time intervals, we can change the momentum also. So this is what I want to say here. This tells why we must, it also tells us that we can change the momentum using various forces and time intervals. That is, using the same equation, I have brought delta P is equal to F into delta T. So by taking different values of forces and different time intervals, we can bring a change in the linear momentum. So for example, let us say we can use larger force for a short time, or we can use a smaller force for a long time. So in either way we can increase the momentum. If force is more and which is applied for a short time, then momentum can be increased. or if even though force is less, but if it is applied for a very longer time, then its momentum can be increased. In either of the cases, the momentum gets increased. So, and change in momentum is called as impulse. So here I have shown change in momentum. This change in momentum is termed as impulse. So let us say impulse on tennis ball. With the same example again. So mass, velocities, force we have calculated and we have got the value of 480 newtons, and time is the same 0.005 seconds. Impulse, that is change in momentum, from the previous formula here, delta p, this is impulse. Impulse is equal to F into delta t. So impulse is equal to F into delta t. Here F we have calculated as 480 newtons, and delta t is the time interval is 0.005 seconds. When we multiply both these values, we get the impulse as 2.4 kg per meter square, meters per second. And also we can also calculate in other ways. Impulse is equal to delta p is equal to m by delta v. So hence here we have got a mass m into delta v. Here we have got a mass of 0.06 kg and a velocity of 40 meters per second. So when we take the product of impulse, so we have got 2.4 kg meters per second. So conservation of linear momentum, we will see one more point. So this law of conservation of linear momentum states the total linear momentum of an isolated system remains constant. So isolated implies no external force. That is, if force is equal to 0, delta p by delta t. So here if you observe, delta p is also 0. So if force is 0, then change in momentum is also 0. Change in momentum means impulse will be 0. If there is no force acting on a body, there won't be any change in momentum and there won't be any impulse. So where this linear momentum conservation is applied? So this law helps us to deal with collisions. In the next classes, we will be learning about collisions. So in what way this linear momentum helps us to deal with collisions, let us see in later classes. If the system momentum cannot change, the momentum before the collision must equal to after the collision. Let us say here a white ball is striking with a black ball. So before the momentum is in this way, let us suppose this black ball is in the rest position, but when the white ball hits the black ball, what happens? So white ball moves front and even the black ball also starts moving. So if you observe in these two cases, even though the system before the collision and after the collision will not change. So this is called as conservation of linear momentum. That means, in other words, we can write in this way, that is momentum before collision is equal to momentum after collision. So P remains constant. So this is nothing but conservation of linear momentum. So to study a collision, first what we have to do? We have to add the momenta of the objects before the collision and add the momenta of the objects after the collision, and we have to check whether the two sums are equal. So it should be equal, even though the momenta before collision and the individual momenta after collision may change, but the sum will be equal before and after the collision. Let us see with an example. The total momentum of a system is the vector sum of the momentum of all components of the system. Here I have taken a very big ball, that let us say of mass, having mass m1 and moving with a velocity v2. There is a small object m2 having mass and velocity v2. Now we should calculate the individual momentum of both the balls. Let us say the momentum of the first ball is m1 v1 and the lighter ball is m2 v2. Now total momentum will be m1 v1 plus m2 v2. Because both are moving in the same direction, we have taken as positive value. And if you go to the second example, so both are moving in the opposite direction after hitting. So if you observe here, the lighter one is going away from each other. In the same way, the heavier ball is also moving in opposite direction to the lighter one. Let us say their masses are m1 and m2 respectively and moving with the velocities of v1 and v2. Again the total momentum if we calculate. So P is equal to linear total momentum P is equal to m1 v1 minus m2 v2. If you move on to the third example, let us suppose there are 5 balls. So if you observe here m1, m2, m3, m4 and m5. So m1, m2 are moving in the same direction, so their momentums gets added, that is P is equal to m1 v1 plus m2 v2. And if you observe m3 and m4, they are moving opposite direction of m1 and m2, hence their momentums are considered as negative, minus m3 v3 minus m4 v4. And if you come to the fifth one, this is a special case where the ball has stopped or is in rest position, therefore its velocity will be 0. That means the linear momentum of this particular ball is 0. Hence P is equal to m1 v1 minus m2 v2 minus m3 v3 minus m4 v4, and the fifth one is 0 as its velocity is 0. Now let us see the billiards pool or conservation of linear momentum in the case of billiards pool. So the cue ball, whatever the white ball is called as cue ball, this cue ball's entire momentum is transferred to the ball number 3 after it strikes the ball number 3. So let us say first the red ball is having a velocity 0, that means which is at rest, but the cue ball is moving with velocity v1. Now what happens, this ball strikes the cue ball strikes the red ball. Let us say before collision the momentum will be as follows. So cue ball momentum is m1 v1 and second number 3 momentum is m2 into, as its velocity is 0, it is 0. So P is equal to total momentum is equal to sum of all these momentums. So m1 v1 plus m2 into 0. This is before collision. And let us see after collision. After collision the cue ball stops, that means it has come to rest. So now v1 becomes 0 and the red ball moves with the speed of v2, let us say. So after collision the individual momentums will be m1 into 0 as well as m2 into v2, and the total momentum will be P is equal to m1 into 0 plus m2 into v2. So balls, let us see an example where balls with equal mass and momentum collide. So total momentum is 0 before and after collision. Both are having equal mass, let us say ball 1 and ball 2. So both are moving with equal masses. When they are colliding, what happens? The mass of the momentum of this ball is equal to the mass of this ball. Both the balls are having equal masses but moving in opposite direction, hence we have taken momentum of this as mv1 is equal to minus of mv2. Okay, so what happens, that means mv1 minus mv2 is equal to 0. So this is having a mass of mv1, this is having a mass of m minus mv2. So when we sum up both the linear momentums, we get the value of 0. Now after colliding, what happens, let us see. After colliding, this linear momentum comes to 0. That means F12 is equal to force applied by the first ball on the second ball is equal to force applied by the second ball on the first ball in the opposite direction. So minus is taken to show the direction. Now let us see one more example. Here if you see momentum before throwing or before colliding is 0. So momentum after colliding, that is equal to 0. That means m1 v1 plus m2 v2. That means m1 v1, that means before hitting m1 v1 is equal to after hitting m2 v2 but with a minus. That means same momentum but with opposite directions, hence there is a minus. So if you see here, momentum is same but the directions are different. Now using these conservations of linear momentum, we will explain how do rockets work, or the exhaust exits the rocket at high speed, and also we need high speed because the gas has little mass. So the rocket moves in the opposite direction, not as fast as the gas because more mass. So momentum before should be equal to momentum after. So m1 v1 is equal to minus m2 v2. Now we will see with an example. Momentum before collision is equal to 0. Momentum after moving away from each other is also 0. That means if you see here, this box is having a mass m, whereas the second box is having, the second cart is having a 3 times the mass of the first one, let us say. So momentum after joining is mv1 plus 3mv2, and mv1 is equal to minus 3 mv2, or else v1 by v2 is equal to minus 3 m by m. Mn gets cancelled, so we get v1 by v2 as minus 3. That means v1 moves with a velocity of 3 times the velocity of the second one. So this is shown in the figure. That means small ball with mass m1 collides with larger ball of mass m2, which is stationary or which is at rest. So here we have shown the velocity as 0. Then the total momentum is same before and after. So before collision, let's say the momentum of this ball is m1 v01, as well as this becomes 0. Then after collision, let us say, after collision, so both move in the opposite directions. So m2 vf2 minus m1 vf1 will be the momentum of after collision. Hence, before and after, both the momentum should be equal. Now two railroad cars with mass m1 and m2 collide, are linked together and move in tandem. So both this m1 m2 both are linked and moving in the same direction. Let us suppose the total momentum of the system should be same. So if you calculate the individual momentum, its individual momentum is m2 v2, whereas the first one momentum is m1 v1. So after linking, what happens? Both are moving as one object, hence their masses gets added, that is m1 plus m2, and finally they move with a final velocity called vf. So whatever the momentum before joining or linking should be equal to momentum after linking. One more example. So let us see, we are imparting a bullet into a block of wood. Let us suppose the bullet is moving with a velocity of vb having mass m. Let us say the wooden block mass is capital M. So what happens? If you observe here, mvb is equal to m into v into a. So if we know m, small m and va, we can calculate vb. That is, bullet velocity is equal to m into va by m. So this is shown in the figure. Now this we have taken as billiards pool. Momentum is a vector. So vector addition determines linear momentum conservation. So here there is a cue ball. Initial momentum this is. So these are stationary pool balls. So we are hitting these stationary pool balls with cue ball. So the momentum before hitting should be equal to the momentum after hitting. So what happens now after hitting the cue ball with the stationary pool balls? What happens? this cue ball becomes stationary, but pool ball starts moving. So then some few balls may miss their path, hence this can be shown as path of missing pool ball, whereas path of possible shot will be in this way. So this is how we can explain law of conservation of momentum. Even if you observe this, so whenever there is a crackers in the air, if you observe, if you observe, so momentum, if you observe, so moment mass of each particle, let us say first particle is m1, velocity is v1 in the x direction and velocity in the y direction is v1y, let us suppose. So this will be equal to the other particle which is having a mass of m2 and moving with the respective velocities of v3, v2 in x and y direction. So if you observe all the particles, so their momentum is conserved. That means, so the momentum of this plus this plus this plus all the other particles momentum is same before exploding is same to after exploding. So let us see with an example. A 1000 kg car, let us say car 1, runs into the rear of a stopped SUV. So this car has hit the SUV which is in rest position, which is having a mass of 1500 kg. This is having a mass of 1000 kg car 1 and this is having a mass of 1500 kg. Immediately after the collision, the cars are hooked together and have a speed of 4 meters per second. So what was the speed of car 1 just before the collision? So we have to calculate the speed of car before the collision. To solve this, so let us see, car 1 mass is 1000 kg, SUV mass m2 is 1500 kg, final velocity they are moving with a velocity of 4 meters per second. So these are the parameters that we got. Now we have to calculate the momentum before collision. So momentum before collision is equal to m1 v1 is equal to 1000 kg into velocity v1. The momentum after collision, let us say, after collision they are both moving with the same as one entity or one body, hence m1 plus m2 into v2. Whereas m1 plus m2 is 1000 plus 1500, that is 2500 into v2 is, that is final velocity is 4 meters per second. So conserving momentum, that means both should be equal before and after collision. So 1000 kg into v1 is equal to 2500 kg into 4 meters per second. So v1 is equal to 2500 by 1000 into 4 meters per second. So if you simplify this, we got the car's velocity before collision is 10 meters per second. So if you see the example, both cars together have more mass than just car 1. If you observe, one first car mass is 1000 kg, but when we have added both the cars, its mass increased to 2500 kg. Since both move away at 4 meters per second, the lighter car 1 must have a greater speed before the collision. So both are moving away at 4 meters per second. That means the lighter car might have moving with a greater speed before the collision. Hence, if you see here, so we have got the first car's velocity is 10 meters per second, but after the hitting, both are moving with 4 meters per second. Even though the second car SUV is heavier, but because of the hitting, it is able to move 4 meters per second, means the first car might be traveling with a very high speed. So reiterating what all we learnt in today's class is that we have seen the conservation laws. That means the total amount of mass and the total amount of energy or the total amount of linear momentum in an isolated system is constant. And we have seen some examples proving these conservative laws. Important equations to remember is that, so linear momentum we have to remember, that is P is equal to mv. This is alternate form of Newton's second law, that is F is equal to delta into mv by del t. Definition of work is can be given as force into displacement, and impulse is equal to change in momentum, that is delta into mv or F of delta t. We have learned what is kinetic energy, that is kinetic energy is equal to half mv square. We have also seen what is gravitational potential energy, which is equal to mgh, where here we have taken d, that means height. And we have also to know what is definition of power. Power is equal to work by time. Work is nothing but it is in the form of energy, so energy by time. Special case equations that we have seen, speed after falling a distance d is equal to v is equal to root 2 gd. Height reached given initial speed v, that means d is equal to v, rearranging these values we get d is equal to v square by 2g. Angular momentum or circular motion is equal to mv into r. These are the important equations to remember. Thank you one and all for your patience listening. Signing off for today's session.